Thank you so much for inviting us into your space. We're going to take a moment to share with you our community agreement that Ashe always begins our meetings with. And with that, I'm going to ask Joanne to share the SIFA with you.
So we always open our meetings with the poem. The SIFA is written by our founding board member, Mtemishi St. Julian. May we always remember those who have gone before us. May we be inspired by their vision and valor. May their lives continuously remind us that service is more important than success, that people are more important than possessions, that principle is more important than power. May whatever we do be shaped and molded by honesty, competence, and commitment. May our children and our children's children carry forth with pride the nobility of our history and tradition. To the creator of us all, we dedicate our lives to make this world better and more beautiful. Ashe.
Ashe. So that is the energy, the calling that we use to kind of bring everyone to center whenever we start a meeting or event, in our space. And today we get to be in our space and all of your spaces. So that is really cool and really exciting. And particularly exciting because, you know, there are lots of people, organizations, projects, entities that you meet in the journey of this kind of work that we all do. And it has been very special being in relationship with Boston Ujima. We've learned so much from you guys. And so it is truly an honor to be able to share some of our learnings with you. And so with that, I'm going to ask if we have screen sharing abilities. And if so, I'm going to ask LaShonda to put up our presentation. Yes, we should.
The Ujima team has the presentation and they're sharing on our behalf.
Oh, they're sharing on our behalf. Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share it. One moment.
All right. So
sorry.
It's all good. This was just a place policy and partnership. Just some kind of overall highlights to kind of ground what we have learned about equitable community development. And when I say we, I mean really Ashe represents a collection of people, a collection of organizations, and a collection of experiences that we have been fortunate to share journey with in the 25-year history of this organization that really has helped us to understand and to live in a lot of ways. And I know that you all know this as a BIPOC-led organization. It's hard to live equity, right? Even when we are demanding it of society and the overall structure, because we are in this society, it's hard to make our organizations live up to equity. But we get to be the places where we prove that equity is not only possible, but that the outcomes of equity are, just innumerable and, help us all. So with that, we're going to go through, some lessons learned in this 25-year journey. So you can move to the next slide. And just so y'all know, Shonda, Joanne, I'm going to call on y'all to talk about some of these things as well. If we can go to the next slide.
Are you seeing it advance?
No, you're just seeing the first one.
Oh, goodness. Okay. How about now?
No.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, y'all.
No worries.
One moment.
You know the Google machine only does
oh my gosh.
So much of obedience.
We see it now.
Okay, great. So what you'll see before you is a rendition of the visual of the equity framework, which I'm sure many of you have seen, right? That The idea around equity is that, we don't all come from the same circumstances. Therefore, what we all need is different in order to achieve the same levels. And so we're used to seeing, the visual with the tallest person, the middle height person, the shortest person, and all of the other ways, right? There's somewhere there's a hole, there's the baseball field, like there's all of the ways. We're from New Orleans and we love Mardi Gras Carnival. So, ours was catching beads. But one thing that we really have dived into is that, while this graphic is true, what it fails to really dig into is the place-based nature of why these things are true. We know we've lived a lot of the outcomes of redlining, right? And so if we look at the tallest person on this visual, they live in the Lakeview neighborhood, the Audubon City Park neighborhoods, French Quarter, Garden District, Marigny, the Irish Channel, like those kinds of places. If you look at the middle person, they live in Gentilly and Algiers and Central City. They live in Broadmoor and Lake Forest, right? And the people who need the most assistance, the people who need that capacity building, technical assistance, and market subsidies, infrastructure, public policy, access to capital, all of those things. Those are the people who live in Treme, St. Claude, the Seventh Ward, Little Woods, Iberville, those neighborhoods. And the reasons that it is this very neighborhood specific is because this is how specific our cities are and our municipalities, whether they're rural or urban, are in deciding what the outcomes will be for the people who live in those cities. And those decisions are very much based on race and socioeconomic realities, which is why the disparities are seen in those places. So, part of our push is to recognize how place-based this work really is by helping the people who make the policies to recognize how place-based their policies are and how to screen for equity inside of the decisions that they make. So that's kind of our whole framework. And one of the things that we're learning, and so while you may see New Orleans neighborhoods, listed here, we know this is true for all, well, I'm going to say most, 99.9%, if not 100% of the places where people of African descent live on the globe, as well as most BIPOC people, right? So place is very important to how and why we do what we do. We can go to the next slide. So, there's this word equity. It's a buzzword. It's, it's all the rage and all of the rage, right? It is being attacked on so many different levels, but I'll tell you what we've learned about equity during our time and what programs we've developed, to address that particular part. So one of the first things that we learned is that equity is responsive. And that is very hard for an organization to be. To one of the defining attributes of an organization is consistency and reliability and predictability, right? But we who serve, the people that we serve, know that unpredictability is a hallmark of their existence because of the policies that they are subject to. And so finding ways to be responsive, to be nimble, has been a great part of how we are learning to be equitable and to infuse equity into our programs and into our community, creating an expectation for our residents that equity is deserved, right? And so two of the programs that we've highlighted here in terms of the responsiveness of equity, that in order for it to be equitable, it must be responsive. If it is unresponsive, it is by nature inequitable. So our Creative Response Fund, which was developed after COVID to kind of meet the needs. So New Orleans is a city that relies upon culture bearers and artists and gig workers, and we don't like to pay them well. We have an average median income in our city of $36,000, which is well below the national level, yet our culture bearers earn about $17,500 as their median income. And this is despite fueling the largest industry in our city, which is the tourism industry, that cleared 10 billion in 2019, and I think 11.5 are their numbers for last year, right? So during COVID, when it was time for all of the kind of relief efforts, our artists were not eligible for them because of the nature of their work and the way that they receive payments, and were basically abandoned by so many of the structures in our city. So we created the Creative Response Fund in partnership with Junebug and Antenna, a couple of our partners here, to give out over $1.2 million in low barrier relief for the artists and culture bearers in our city. And that investment prompted, through embarrassment, the investment of lots of other organizations who are actually responsible to serving the needs of those folks. So we were very excited about that. In addition, we provided over 14,000 art kits to youth who were at home, during COVID. So we were able to give them coloring books that we made about, issues that were, that advanced our aesthetic. And so coloring books and clay making projects and painting and, all kinds of things. But every single week during COVID, we were able to deliver, these thousands of kits to schools and community centers and to, people's homes and places where people were picking up food and those kinds of things. So, very proud of how we were able to show up for our community during that time. The other thing is Coumba Academy and our Institute for Cultural Education. Particularly at this time when DEI and CRT and all of these efforts are being attacked, when book banning is working to become the norm. These particular programs are aimed at keeping the people, places, and philosophies of the African diaspora central to what and how we learn in this place, in New Orleans, in Louisiana, but also what we learn about the African diaspora. And we were able to transfer those programs into being virtual, and not only serving the people that we normally serve inside of them, but actually expanding our audience, first during the time of COVID, but even since then, we've been able to tap into an online audience that we developed during that time. So that amongst, I don't want to tell you all the ways we served our tenants and our employees during that time, but the ability to be responsive inside of not just disasters, but all of the kinds of disruptions that the people we serve experience in our day-to-day lives. Get to the next slide. Equity is expansive. So when you are designing programs for equity, one of the things that we learn is that you have to think big, you have to dream, you have to think beyond the barriers and the boundaries that folks normally have in place, right? Because one of the things about inequity is that it relies very heavily on those boundaries, right? So when you can think past them and then think of ways to dissolve those boundaries, you are working to infuse equity. And, one of the biggest inequities in our city, one of the biggest disparities that we as an organization have decided to take on because it undergirds so many other inequities is around health. There's a 25 to 30 year difference in life expectancy between Black and white New Orleans. I happened to be working in the mayor's office of the city at the time in 2014 when this study came out that demonstrated that. And I thought it was an emergency because I raised 5 children here. And because of the zip code I've decided to raise them in near their aunties and uncles and nanas and parents, I have condemned them to 25 to 30 year difference in life expectancy, right? And we don't think that that's fair here. However, in our city, most people took that news with, I don't want to say a shoulder shrug, but very close to, right? So we decided to gather partners to work on this. And, we have created a cohort of artists who work as community health workers, who are trusted messengers in their community, to create pathways for health that just really did not exist in our city before they created them. In addition to creating an equity toolkit for hospitals that is to be scaled and shared really across the globe in order to address the disparities that exist between BIPOC folks and white folks everywhere that we live on the globe, right? Unfortunately, you will find this disparity everywhere. And so our I Deserve It program, really is an international model for how communities can directly address those issues in cooperation and partnership with the people in their community who are closest to the issue and are trusted by the community to deal with those issues. Our Alliance for Cultural Equity, really is a great group. It's something that I am, really proud of, because at the time we started forming this group, most of the money that was going towards this program was invested in the consultants and the data people. And we did a turn to say, what if we took the bulk of the money invested in the actual organizations who the consultants and the data people are relying upon for their study? And this went from a study to a whole collective of organizations, 17 organizations right now. That, and if you look at the slide, you'll see that, we make up 60% of the city and receive less than 2% of the philanthropic funding in our city. BIPOC folks at large only get 4%. So we are working on this, not just from a policy perspective, but also from a hard-nosed, hard-line advocacy perspective, using the leaders of these organizations to press the leaders who make these funding decisions to do something different. Instead of funding the organizations who cater to the tourists of our city and cater to industry, actually cater to the residents who make the tourism and other industries possible. So that is our Alliance for Cultural Equity. And next slide. And I don't think we went back. I believe. Okay, equity is expensive, and I am going to turn to our CFO, our money guru, to talk about why equity is so expensive and the ways in which we are looking for the same energy that folks put into inequity to put into.
Okay, so this slide is titled "Equity is Expensive," but I always like to point out lack of equity is even more expensive. But our funders are believing us in the work that we do, and one of our projects is our partnership with the Ujima CDC, Community Development Corporation, and Ujima's focused on turning the space underneath the expressway. I don't know if you've been to New Orleans, but there's 19 blocks that 300 Black-owned businesses were decimated when the expressway was built. We've heard this story throughout the country. It's been repeated all around the country. And our goal now is to take that space that is there underneath the expressway and build a world-class market, bring the businesses back, bring the people back, the artisans, the craftspeople, and really show New Orleans personality. Along with that, we are working on a right to stay policy initiative, anti-displacement. So many times people think of gentrification, as the G word, is a bad thing. It's the displacement that is a problem. And improving your neighborhood is always good, but the people who invested their lives and their talents and their families, they deserve to participate in the goods and the prosperity that comes when a neighborhood improves. So our goal is to make sure that anyone that has been displaced from their neighborhood, they have the right to come back, they have the right to stay, and we are advocating to make sure that there are policies that support that that idea of people who have invested their lives in the neighborhood continue to own and prosper as the neighborhood grows and prospers. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, just, I think you said most of it, but the biggest thing is the same energy, right? Like it took a lot of money, it took a lot of emotion, a lot of policy development in order to create the inequities that we experience today. And so often folks want to, like they want us to solve the problems, right? They want to give nonprofits a little bit of money and be like, all right, there you go. Now, now it's over. And I think it is incumbent upon us to make sure that they always understand and realize that this is a long-term investment. It took hundreds of years really to get to this point, and that there's going to be hundreds of years of dedicated solutions in order for us to get to where we want to go on the road to equity. We can go to the next one. And LaShondra, if you can take us through equity is inclusive.
Absolutely. So thank you, Asali, and thank you, Joanne. Here we talk about equity being inclusive. If you can't tell already, Ashe is on a mission to not only elevate art and community development through the use of art, but also a mission of reclamation. So, right, reclaiming space, reclaiming power, and really restoring balance through equity. And so doing that in an inclusive way has included building a portfolio of real estate that is sustainable and that also is able to be an example to those other organizations that we are in partnership with, as well as the residents that we are in partnership with, to demonstrate what reclaiming power can look like, what economic power can look like. And so Ashe has been slowly but surely acquiring properties in our footprint and expanding the campus. We have moved from a single space that was rented to a full space that is owned, that includes affordable housing units, that also includes now a community theater. And we have 2 additional properties that were acquired as well within the last one this year, and then others not too long before that, which are allowing Ashe to really expand the campus to include Afro-Lux, which will be a boutique hotel. The space is being piloted right now and being used for event space and as a way to be able to demonstrate what the experience and the aesthetic will look like. But ultimately, what it represents is this reclamation of power and this idea that an organization, a Black-led organization, a Black woman-led organization cannot just kind of get through and make it through, but can thrive and can create opportunity for others. And so we have 2 buildings now that are a part of this Afro-Lux boutique hotel footprint. And that includes what we're calling our Ashe Cafe space, as well as the sort of base space that the pilot is now operating in. And this is a boutique hotel that will be part owned by the community, part owned by Ashe, and then also our employees. So this is, again, a way to be inclusive and not just grow the assets for Ashe, but to create assets in the community that community members can play a part in, and a significant part in, and be able to benefit. One of the things that have been happening over the last 25 years and now going into the 26th year and beyond is really focusing on equitable development from an asset-based approach. And so that looks like art as assets, that looks like artists as assets, that looks like action in terms of community power building as an asset. It looks like investing in artists to be community health workers. It looks like investing in art as assets in terms of being able to identify and train Black appraisers to be able to identify and name the value of art that otherwise has been either not recognized or undervalued. It looks like investing in institutions like ACE, which was the Alliance for Cultural Equity that Asali mentioned earlier. And so the Afrolux Boutique Hotel is sort of the twin to the Get You Some Fund, which is a community investment fund, which also creates opportunity for asset building and participation, inclusion for community members, for employees, and for residents. And so for as little as $10 a month, we are currently working on the structure for what that is going to look like in practice. But what we do know is that it will be accessible and affordable to those residents and employees who want to also build assets along with us and be able to do more than just, I think Lolita said earlier in her introduction, do more than just work to pay for something, but to be able to work to build an asset for a community, for themselves, and for the future.
Ashe, thank you. All right, next slide. Oh, equity is existential, Lord. Okay, so one of my missions, so for us, climate is the White Walker, if y'all know Game of Thrones. And we are Jon Snow on the wall trying to catch a White Walker and bring it to the arena so everybody could stop fighting over the foolishness and concentrate on what's about to kill us all, right? So we look at what we face here in New Orleans, but what communities like ours face all around the globe as we are looking at climate migration and just transitions and all of the kinds of things around climate justice and injustice that are not being talked about in the frame of how we exist. We still live with a map, and I challenge everyone to look up an accurate map of Louisiana. First, think of your memory or think of the Weather Channel and what map you see, and then look up the accurate map. We currently use in this country, and particularly in this state, a map from 1932. The most accurate map is from 2017, and it's not a boot, it's a holy sock. And by now, it might just be the tool part of the sock at the rate at which we lose land. But nobody is making solutions for that. Nobody is even really talking about it outside of community groups like ours. So trying to raise the voice around the fact that we are losing our land, losing our people, losing our culture due to corporate climate degradation. And so really, working on that as a way to still exist. We are working really on still existing because scientists tell us that our time is short for introducing radical interventions that nobody in our space is talking about. So we take on that role using art and culture to put forth those radical interventions. We're working to get to zero carbon in our own operations and are partnering with people like Taproot Earth, like the Descendants Project, like the St. James Rise to bring those issues to bear. And we only have a couple more minutes. So as we pull up the last slide, which is just our team member, not just these are all of our amazing team members that we are blessed to be able to do this work with every day. I do want to tell you, because this presentation is a couple of years old, there are two other programs that we're extremely excited about. One, the Community Power Policy Project, where we are doing design charrettes with community every month to work on an equity policy that will become a ballot initiative in November of 25. So just like we would do for architecture project, like we're doing for the hotel, like we did for the Cultural Innovation District, working with community to actually architect a policy. And then the other thing is an international policy called Afro-Carnival, where Carnival makes $175 billion in the world every year. Black, Indigenous, and Latino people only earn 2 to 5% of that. Women only earn 0.2% of that. And so we have the privilege of working with the Organization of American States and their member countries to create an event and a policy that aims to move that number to 10% over the next 10 years. So that is us in a nutshell, and we would love to hear your responses, your questions, and all of that kind of good stuff.
Thank y'all so much. I'm also so deeply sorry about the slideshow mishap,
No
but
worries, it wasn't a big deal.
everything you shared was incredible. So deep with like wisdom. And I'm just wondering if the room is ready for some questions. If anyone has any questions they want to ask at this moment in time, please, there's like enough of us here where you can come off mute and jump in and ask a question. Yeah, that was incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who on your team, are those hands raised? Oh, that's clapping, sorry.
Mhm.
Who on your team is responsible for collecting the data that you're sharing throughout, that you shared throughout the presentation? Data.
So our community health workers collect a lot of the data for the different projects that we work on, but a lot of the data that I shared is community data. So we have an organization here called the Data Center that does a lot of the work of analyzing disparities for us here in the city. That we're able to take that information and use it
Yeah,
in
we'll
other.
go right back inside and start it.
Oh, okay. I think that was a mistake. And so they work not just with us, but in the ecosystem of nonprofits and NGOs in the city in general to shed light on so many of the disparities that exist in the city. And so that's where a good bulk of that information comes from. But also, I'm a nerd. We are probably a team of nerds, at least a few of us, and we're constantly doing research. We're constantly looking at best practices. And a lot of this is decades worth of research and work that we have learned from, imbibed. But we conduct evaluations of all our programs regularly. We conducted health impact assessments. Yeah. So there's a lot of partners who do data that we work with as well. So the only data that we collect and put out ourselves or around I Deserve It and ACE, the Alliance for Cultural Equity, but we certainly participate in a rich data ecosystem.
Is that one, Boston for very different reasons, but also is driven by a huge tourism economy.
Yeah,
And how it doesn't, how the very people who can make areas of the city the place that people want to come to, they don't participate in that, in those dollars. They're all downtown.
absolutely.
And so I was curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah. And so to your point also about the data that we base a lot of our Afro-Carnival work on is the Interdevelopmental Bank of the Caribbean is where I got that data from. The not the
Could you
UN. UN
repeat
has a
that?
lot of data.
Could you please repeat that? The what?
The Interdevelopmental Bank of the Caribbean.
Okay.
And so they have a whole set of data around what they call an orange economy, which is around cultural production. And also UNESCO and United Nations has a lot of data as well. And I'm happy to share, it's, data sources.
That was the one other thing I wanted to ask you was, were you a part, as a nonprofit, are you a part of the UN? And do you make presentations there?
So we are not a part of the UN as this nonprofit, but it is something that we are going to do. I think we're going to do our application either but the end of this year or next year to become a delegate. But I have participated in the UN before as when I worked for the city and for our business alliance, the New Orleans Business Alliance, and have been able to present in those spaces, particularly when the opportunity zone stuff was coming down. I was, one of the community experts around it, and I was trying to tell them it wasn't going to work because all of the benefits for rich people are baked in at the beginning, and you're just expecting us to pick crumbs up. But nobody was really listening to me then. But I did see inside of the process, to your point, an avenue for getting a lot of these relationships and solutions moving. So we will, dig into that, particularly as we're moving into this international policy work.
We do have a partnership with OAS.
Mhm.
And have made several presentations there and have had a lot of interest in the work that we're doing in terms of community power building and equity, and connection to other communities with similar challenges.
Yeah, and OAS is the Organization of American States. And I just make sure to say that because when I met the lady from the Organization of American States, I didn't know who they were. I just, was running my mouth to a lady at the panel that I was sitting next to. But or they happen to be the governing body for North America, South America, and the Caribbean. So they're like the NATO for the Western Hemisphere, which I had no idea of because it's not something, and that's widely used in the somebody asked in the public discourse. So they have been an amazing partner, and actually have a whole body of work around cultural preservation and ancestral knowledge, and just a whole different way of thinking. And they're currently led by folks from the Caribbean and South America who are infusing a lot more of that into the ecosystem in the conversation. So we are very excited to be their partners. I've never been this excited to be partners with a government group, I'll just say.
That's thank you so much for that and for breaking down the acronym. That was a question I had about you in your presentation. You had so many partners, so many partnerships. Can you talk about how you become partners with people? Like, what's your what are your practices? What are your processes? I don't know. How do you vibe it? I don't know. Just yeah, how do y'all do that?
So, all right, so I'll start by saying took over leadership of this organization in 2020, right? So there's a lot of relationships that Ashe already had as a 25, or at that time 20-year-old organization that really made its bones um around changing perceptions of African Americans and being an African American institution in an African American city that has a lack of African American institutions, right? So there were just some natural partnerships and a lot of groundwork, and particularly around Katrina recovery and all of those things that the organization had done. I'm a child of New Orleans. Elders come tell me what they want me to do all the time. People walking down the street, yo, Sale, I got this idea. Like, I think I'm just a natural partner. And we have to figure out and weed out like the things that we're not going to do. And it's probably we still do too many of them. But I think that our way of doing and being is naturally collaborative. We take our lead from community. Like that's how we decide what we're going to do. We're very big on strategic planning and, community led work, led, not all the time implemented. So, partnership is just kind of part of our DNA. Now we are working on ways to be more efficient in our partnerships. And what I find too, and Joanne, you can tell me if you feel this way. But like you know how you have like friends that's been your friend from elementary school or college or whatever, and y'all haven't talked to each other in 5-10 years, but when y'all see each other, it's just like the last time y'all saw each other, and then y'all start right back up again. Like that is how so many of our relationships are. Ashe really is kind of like a living being, and so much of what we're able to do is because of the ways that we're able to be in partnership with folks. And so often we have a lot of capacity that other people don't in our ecosystem. I mean, as little of an organization as we are, we're still probably the largest Black-led cultural institution in our city and possibly in our region, unfortunately. And so we also take that responsibility very seriously of holding our folks and, doing, being that lift up or being that voice in the room. And so I think the trust that we have garnered, because so often we are that voice in the room for people, and they know that we can be relied upon to represent them accurately, fairly, and exuberantly, right? So if you are the kind of partner that will stand up for your partners even when they're not there, they will know about it, they'll hear about it, and they'll know you're making space for them, and that makes your relationship more trustworthy. It makes you able to attract other and more partners.
Asali, if I can add, I would say in addition to all of those things, service and
Mhm.
sharing.
Yeah.
So Ashe, when we talk about equity and Ashe
Mhm.
recognizing all that it has, even with limited capacity, it's still an organization that is leveraging what it does have to do on behalf and for others and with others, and also sharing resources. So being able to support organizations with fundraising, being able to support organizations with collective thought partnership, and holding space, providing space, literal space, and other for community members and partners to be able to engage and exist.
Yes, definitely, LaShonda, and thank you for that. I think that's part of like the DNA, right? Like we just kind of do that naturally when other people are like,
Yeah.
hold it close to your chest. We're like, ah,
Yes.
and we are all out there. Kind of part of the joy that we do. How do we move in conflict with partners? Like they may be Zionists. So we are very much talkers, very much let's have it out. I'll tell you, I work closely with our council, and I will send them a note cussing all of them out, and y'all ain't SHIT for this thing that y'all passed, and yada yada yada. And then next week, I need you to pass this, right? So being in conflict is part of being human. It is part of being an American for sure, and we have conflicts even inside of our organization. And so, we work inside of our organization, we kind of try to work from a couple of different equity frameworks, and then we try to extend those out, when there's, the kind of clashes with partners. But I will say that with our close partners, we've been lucky enough not to have too many of those. But we all so all of our processes are very long, because it's all about community, all about neighbors, all about talking, and it's all about moving at the speed of trust. And so that, sometimes that just take longer than you would want it to take. And so we do invest the time in dealing with those conflicts and, not really moving past them. But also there's a level of discernment in deciding what level of partnership you allow people to, come in on, because there are some partners that are here and some partners that are here, right? And we know how we move with all of them. Bookings open up for the hotel. Hopefully we'll be able to break ground by next fall. But in our pilot space, if you let us know well enough ahead of time, we can accommodate you there. So let us know when you're coming, and we'll see if we have the availability. We also use that space for staff meetings and board retreats and that kind of stuff for folks. So but let us know. We particularly love to support our partners in that way, and we'd love to get your feedback. Now, if you come, you'll have to answer some questions about the hotel and help participate in our design. So you have to do your part, but we'd love to welcome you. And the HBCU climate change conference in March. Oh, now they know they wrong for that. So Mardi Gras is March the 4th. So the only reason that they're having the HBCU climate change conference in New Orleans on March 5th is for Mardi Gras. But that's good to know. Does that mean they'll be here for our Afro Carnival? So we will thank you for letting us know that, and we will definitely be tapping into them and into that. We have some events that week. So following Carnival is our World Carnival Summit, where we're actually doing that policy development I told you about for the Organization of American States. So members of the other countries will be joining us in New Orleans at that time to work on the policy that will be November is going to be a great month next year. So that will also be on the ballot for OAS in November of 25. that policy work that we'll be doing in March and throughout. But we will definitely find ways to include our HBCU students. And I would be happy if the organizers, if you guys could share the slides with the group, because it also contains our contact information. And if you would like to reach out to us to stay at Afrolux or to discuss any of the other initiatives, we would love to enter into partnership with you all.
Wow, I was about to ask you how we can find you and follow your work. I think this is just like the beginning. I know you said y'all have been around for 25 years, but it sounds like there's so much more to come, especially with the long view.
That next 25 years is gonna be something. Y'all gonna have to plan with us.
Yeah, yeah, and I can't believe we're at time already. But
I talk
it's
long.
and full and like with wisdom. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us and for our presenters. Such a good time. The chat shows the depth of how much people were interested, excited, and just want to know more. So yeah, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for sticking with us. Yeah.
All right, we will see y'all. We coming back to Boston, so I want to see all of y'all when I get there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, yes.
And we
And
look forward
when are you
to-
coming to Boston?
We don't know yet, but we will. We do have a travel trip to Boston with some of our community members in the cards for probably within the next 6 months. We have our Africarnival, so we're trying to focus on that. So maybe like in the March, early April. But we definitely have a learning trip to bring some of our community members to meet you guys, and so we would love